Hello, I'm Kate Russell, technology reporter and author. You may know me best from seeing me over the last 14 years or so on the BBC's global technology show Click. But I've actually been reporting on tech since 1995, a time when if you wanted to upgrade your operating system, you would have to drive into town, visit an overcrowded store where you would pick up a plastic wrapped cardboard box that's probably been sitting on a shelf for several weeks. That whole scenario seems wrong on so many levels right now here in 2021, does it not? Well, over the decades, I've watched the digital technologies evolve and shape our world. From a standalone BBC microcomputer on my kitchen table to a connected world of more than 4 billion global citizens. I've watched the focus shift from electronics and circuit boards to cultural phenomenon that is all about people. 2020 has brought us into sharp focus about how fundamental these technologies are to modern living. And while pandemic lockdowns have been crushing for so many people in their businesses, on a positive note, I believe we're finally seeing the world coalesce and commit to the kind of widespread digital transformation that could usher in the next evolution for industry. It's going to be about data, analytics, automation, and predictability. Are you ready for the shift? Well, you're tuned in here today, so I'm guessing you're at least a few steps along that path. And to help you a few steps more, we've invited a panel of speakers to share insights and experiences from their own transformation journeys. Please join me in welcoming John Bax, Chief Financial Officer at OneSource Virtual, and Derek Sager, who is VP Controller at Computer Aid Inc. Welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like first for you to introduce yourselves to the audience and just tell us a little bit about your business and what it is that you do in the context of the discussion today. So John, let's start with you.
So name's John Bax. I'm the CFO of OneSource Virtual, also known as OSV. We are the largest boutique Workday integrator, and also service provider. So we do implementations of Workday, initial implementations and add-on modules and so forth. But more importantly, the bulk of our business is processing transactions on the Workday platform. So we process payroll taxes, benefits, COBRA, those sorts of things for about 1.5 million people in North America and Europe in any given week or any given month. And we move about $80 billion USD through our payroll and our payroll tax services and so forth. And then we also have what we call a fintech product on the accounts payable platform where we automate and process AP for people that are on Workday. Aside from being a Workday partner, we're also a full platform Workday customer. So my own financials are on Workday, our own HCM is Workday, we're on Workday payroll, we're on Adaptive for budgeting, forecasting, and planning, basically a full platform Workday customer and also Workday service provider.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, payroll certainly something that is not getting any less complicated as the world moves into more digital realms. Derek, welcome to you as well. Please tell us a bit more about you and your company.
Sure, Derek Sager, VP Controller at Computer Aid. We are a privately held business with revenues north of 800 million, and we focus really on the digital transformation of IT, where we specialize in application management, strategy, consulting, intelligent automation. We have a large portion of our business focused in the contingent workforce solutions, as well as now analytics. We've been a Workday customer since January of 2019. We are a full platform with respect to the core application. So we're payroll. We use OSV for our garnishments and processing. Full financial. We are a PSA. And we use, like I said, intended payroll and everything in terms of procurement and the like. So we are all in terms of Workday. It is our one-stop shopping for our entire employee experience, which we also then use for open enrollment and everything else around the employee experience, performance management, and the like.
Thank you. Well, I know you are both, because we've had obviously pre-discussions about the talk here today, and I know that you're both doing really interesting things with the technology we're here to talk about. And one of the things I want to start with is, in 2020 has been a tough year for everybody. Lots of businesses have had to scramble on digital transformation strategies that were to be honest, already long overdue in many respects. But you guys are both sort of like were well on the way of your digital transformation journeys already. So I wanted to ask you both, what internal and external pressures pushed your firm into that transformation? John, why don't we start with you?
Well, for us, and particularly for 2020, and some of the issues with having to be, having our workforce forced to go work from home, I hate to use this word, but it was actually pretty easy for us. I feel guilty using the word that it was easy for us, but our company's about 10 years old. We were born in the cloud, and I hate to use that, sounds like a cliche, but we were born in the cloud, and so we've always had cloud-based software. And our two primary platforms, obviously, is Workday, as I mentioned, and then we're also on Salesforce, and we really don't have anything that's on premise. And when COVID happened, and everybody, almost seemingly overnight, had to go work from home, we picked up our entire workforce of about 800 to 900 people that were in offices and had them working from home within 48 hours. And that's really easy when you don't have anything on premise necessarily. Everything's cloud based, everything, as long as you've got a monitor and internet access, you can do it. And so for us, it was actually very easy, and we have very limited integrations inside of our company because we use the full platform of Workday for everything on HCM and Fins and all the other modules that are out there. So it just didn't require a lot of handoffs, and it made it very easy to just pick up and go home. So for us, we didn't necessarily have to do the transformation because we were born that way as a younger company. There really just wasn't a lot of legacy on-premise kind of systems that had to be ripped out. And so for us, it was, again, I hate to use the word, I feel guilty using the word, but it was easy.
And it definitely put you a few steps ahead of the competition as we went into the pandemic process, or even your clients, I guess, were probably, a lot of them were grateful for you being ahead of the game and able to keep your services intact.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Derek? And you obviously are another example of being ready for this almost before you needed to be. What were the pressures that drove you to the digital transformation?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't COVID related. Much like John's organization, we started making this shift to cloud. So we're a little older. We're north of 30 years old. So for us, culturally, getting to the cloud was needed. It's what we do with our clients, and we're a ServiceNow shop, and Workday was really that next step to get us to cloud. And as COVID played out, we're grateful that we did. But really, what we'll talk about here today in terms of what drove us here. For us, it's a big piece of our business is focusing contingent workforce, and in that market space, it's all about volume, but the profit is declining, so it's almost a race to the bottom, if you will. So from a finance function, a back office function, being able to scale and handle large volumes of data with a minimal workforce was really what I was trying to accomplish. And we as a team were able to do that when we began the journey with Workday to explore it as the application of choice. We made that a huge part of our design and implementation effort. And now looking back 2 years later, it's been tremendous in terms of the benefit and the value we've gained from that push. Painful along the way, but nonetheless, as we continue to grow our business, but also as we scale, I don't have to really think about adding the headcount. It's all automated. It's digitized, where not only for us internally, but also from our supplier network, where it's all just like John said, connect into our application. And you can take a look at your data. So it's been tremendous. It's really self-driven to get us to be all cloud-based, paperless.
And I think any pressure that can be taken off businesses that you interact with during this, difficult period, it must have been, a really big benefit to them. One of the acronyms that I've heard a lot about in preparing for this discussion is PSA, Professional Services Automation. For the uninitiated, as I was originally, it's basically software that brings together complex project management needs of managing lots of people. Now, you're both in that business, but John, you've been in that business for many, many years. How has it changed over the, how does the look of that sort of whole industry changed over the years?
Well, I mean, specifically in my time here, the world seemed to move a little bit from what you call time and materials, where you bill people by the hour, to more of a fixed bid, where customers want to know, okay, it costs blank to implement this module or this system. And so when the world moved to that, for us, we were already on Workday's PSA module. Became important to be able to manage your cost and who had a certain skill set, certain certification was able to do the work. In the past, to be fair, some people might get sloppy with their hours if it was time and material, if you just thought that the customer could pay you. But in a fixed bid world, you have to really nail it, or else you're going to have an unprofitable job. And the key with PSA for us is it's all in one database along with our HCM and our payroll. So we know very specifically who's available, what he or she makes, what he or she's hourly billing rate is, what he or she already has planned for PTO or for holiday. We know when they're available, when they're not available. We actually know when they're scheduled to go to training and when they're going to come out of training and when they're going to be certified. And we never, and I hate to say this, it's odd to say it, but we never make mistakes on thinking, oh, we thought this job was profitable, now it's not, because there are no spreadsheets. It's all in one database, all shared with our financials, with our HCM, and with our payroll for every individual who's out there doing consulting, billable consulting, whether fixed bid or T&M, time and material. And it's just made things so much easier, and we almost never make a budget mistake. And we're not surprised if a job ends up being profitable or unprofitable, because we're able to see that and plan it as we can see how the people come through the PSA system.
Well, this sort of feeds into the point I made in the introduction about predictability, isn't it? Is, in this day and age, particularly when the business landscape is so unpredictable, that sort of that piece of the puzzle being something that you can actually predict, for good or for bad. I guess that makes a big difference in the climate that we find ourselves in right now for you, that predictability, John, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, for us.
And Derek, for you, go on.
No, what I was going to say is if you have a consulting shop or an accounting firm or a law firm, anything where your primary service delivery is people that bill, the single most important stat, and everybody who's in one of these worlds will know it, is utilization. You have to get your utilization of your people up. And if you can get them up from 66 to 67 to 68 to 70, that's where the profitability or the loss lies. And since we've been on Workday PSA, we've seen our utilization go up. It's had a demonstrable return for us because we're able to know exactly, like I said earlier, who's available, when they're available, what their skill set is, what they're rated on, what jobs they can work on, what jobs they can't work on. And if you can inch that utilization up by 2, 3, 4, 5%, it all drops to the bottom line. It's wildly, we've had a phenomenal return on that.
And how about for you, Derek? What does good PSA look like in your world?
Yeah, I would echo everything John mentioned on his last point around utilization. With our shift to Workday, you just have this enormous amount of data that you then really need to make sure you organize and start to look at to optimize your workforce. And as John said, in our business, people are our greatest and most valuable assets. So ensuring that they're deployed and they're effectively utilized and profitable is really how we need to best manage our business. From the finance lens, then I shift to, for me, it's also then focusing on time to cash. So depending upon the nature of the business, whether you're in accounting or a law firm, and our business is IT services, I'm very much focused on my team is reporting in their time. How long does it take for me to capture it, invoice it, and then get paid? And that's really where we've focused as COVID came into play. We were able to look at our clients to say, who are we worried about? Who do we see their industries being impacted? Where do we expect delays in cash flows? And then conversely, what we were able to see is really an uptick in hours where we're used to that PTO in the summer and the holidays. It just kept going, and it continues to go. So from utilization, you have to look at the data and say, we know why we're seeing this positive trend. We are benefiting from it, but what we're also doing too is within the data and in the PSA, as I start to look at my customer base in government, we were seeing some delays in payment. Well, what we really were able to do is look at the data to say we're billing as we normally would. In fact, we're billing quicker, which is great for what we've accomplished with Workday. But it really helped us look at what's happening economically, both in the postal service, the elections. How are we being impacted by external factors, and then what can we do about it in terms of how do we change our business model to adjust with that? So predictability is, for me, it's been very much focused on cash flows in our business as well.
And you both have digital innovations that really make you stand out in your field. We're talking insight, predictability, automation, and even scalability. What do you think, Derek, it is about your innovations that really make you stand out?
Sure. So, and I've touched on a large portion of our business is focused in this contingent workforce. So, here in the States, a lot of what's happened in the government sectors is the states have really focused on outsourcing a lot of the work to companies like Computer Aid, and we become the staffing provider to them. So we have over 4,500, if not more, contingent workers. So for us, when you think about the volume of data pre-Workday, I could say I had about 3 FTEs when I looked at my team of accountants that spent the equivalent of 3 FTEs time just receiving invoices, coding them, entering them into our legacy ERP, where as we made the transformation to Workday, and I look at really the landscape of how do I get this data, the state's approving it, we integrate it into Workday, and it's all paperless. So I no longer have members of my team receiving and coding invoices. We've reoriented their workflow to more value add tasks. And then from the supplier's perspective, they're not sending us paper invoices anymore. And it took a little bit of time to reorient them to say, well, wait a minute. But what we've done on the back end is really open them up to, and here's how we're going to share.
Oh, and we were disallowed from knowing how he was going to share it as the connection died.
We've been censored.
What a shame. We have definitely. John, while we wait for Derek to come back, because obviously these are the kinds of nuances that the modern day and age that we live in has dealt us. These are the hands that we have to deal with. You have to pivot at a moment's notice when some part of technology or life or people fail you. And there we are, Derek's back. We were just talking about how this is such a great analogy for the world that we live in at the moment, that you have to be ready at a moment's notice for technology to drop you.
Yeah, that's okay.
But you were just saying that you found a way to share, and then we lost you at share.
Sure. So what we found is that we went live on Workday. We were getting a lot of Q&A, and I've always pushed my accounts payable team. When your email gets flooded, what's the nature of it? When the phone rings, what's the nature of it? And we've utilized RPA, and our tool of choice is UiPath, to really look at what are the information requests that are getting that are repetitive, that we can really automate and push data out. So in what we've accomplished with respect to Workday and handling this large portion of our workforce, we really took that as the main goal. If they're looking for just information on their account, let's push it out to them. Let's be proactive and share with them, hey, your insurance, your marketing materials are expiring. Here's your trailing 60-day or 30 days of what we paid you, and here's what we're due to pay you in the next 30, 60 days. So really give them that information that they need to understand what's our business relationship look like. And what that's done for us is, as we continue to grow at 15, 20% a year, from the finance back office, we're not adding folks to support that growth. It's all happening organically within the system and based on our team's workloads.
You mentioned that you some of your clients found this sort of move a struggle initially, or that they resisted initially on that move. Would you agree with the sentiment that I kind of mentioned in the opening, which is I really feel that this COVID pandemic situation has at least put people in a position to have open hearts and open eyes to the technological solutions that really we should have done, decades ago in some respects. Have you found that that's made the journey a bit easier for you, Derek, and then John as well?
It has, and I'm sure John probably experienced this as well. I think for us, it depends on who your customer is. So as I really look at public sector versus commercial, let's say, You know, John and I talking about being in the cloud, and many organizations are at BYOD, bring your own device. So, from an IT perspective, if they say, look, I know you have internet connectivity, and therefore you can get into the applications because they're in the cloud, it must be your PC. And that's a shift in mindset in terms of how much we all benefit from technology. Whereas I think what we tend to find the challenges in mine, public sector, it's a little bit harder to get them to acclimate to this type of change. They tend to be a couple years behind and not as progressive, as innovative as more of our commercial customers are. So that's really where I see that balance playing out. But the good news is, it's a little bit of handholding up front, but once you show them the benefit, they come around, and that's kind of the beauty of it is you have to put a little sweat equity into it, and not everyone has a hard time with it. Some folks do, and you just got to be patient and work with them.
And John, I mean, one of the sort of innovations that you've really hard baked into your company business model is the predictability, isn't it? And this is offering them these innovations. What innovations do you offer your customers now that really make you stand out?
Well, for us, the biggest one is on the services side, where I talk about how we process payroll or payroll taxes, or we do accounts payable processing. We have this patented software called Atmosphere that actually is an untenanted integration of Walmart that crawls the tenant, looking only for information that is very narrowly specifically related to a particular transaction, like if somebody's changed their pay date or their mailing address or their banking information, and it pulls that information very seamlessly in a very secure way, and basically processes the transaction, and we're able to do it without people necessarily touching it. And for us, what it does, it reduces the opportunity for us to make errors. And the worst thing you can do on the 1st or the 15th or the 30th is to mess up somebody's payroll. And so when you remove all the human interaction and you just have automated checks and balances, and we have a little bit of, I'll call it RPA. I think it's a little bit of a stretch to call it machine learning or AI yet, but we have a lot of processes that automate and look for potential errors, look for outliers. All that's done without human beings having to touch all that. And that sort of process innovation helps us reduce any sort of error when it comes to payday. That I think has probably been the biggest benefit. The other thing I would just say in this world where we were all forced to work from home, because we didn't have a bunch of legacy systems, and again I mentioned we're basically just on Workday and also on Salesforce, we just have very little integrations that have to be maintained because they're all in all in two databases, but all in one database with Workday. And so it actually just made it very seamless to go home. And for a lot of our customers, they might have been acquisitions or roll-ups that had old disparate systems they hadn't merged yet. So we were able to help them a lot with some of their transaction processing for HR and for finances because of the way that we were structured. So it really, again, I hate to say easy, but it was very easy to go to work from home, and ultimately has been a benefit to our business.
It has to make you more resilient and a better sort of support structure for your clients who are, sort of going through this also, but probably 3 or 4 steps behind you in terms of their own transformation journey. So it makes you more resilient, do you think, through these changing times as a business?
Oh yeah, for sure. And for us, how we're measured, like if we have an SLA, a service level agreement, for us it's measured on mistakes, on timeliness. Did you get a quarterly filing right? Did you get the payroll right? We had, I probably should open up this. There is no difference between 2019, where we were on premise all together in one or two offices the whole year, and 2020, where most of our, 3/4 of the year, a little over 3/4 of the year, everybody was working from home. There's been no difference in our exception rate, on our error rate, and our timeliness rate. If anything, the last stat I saw, we were actually better. So from a resiliency standpoint, I mean, we did not notice. Customers would not have noticed that all of a sudden everybody's working from home and not sitting around the office
Yeah.
together. It's really honestly pretty amazing.
I understand why you sort of, sometimes almost take a step back when you say how easy it's been for you, because it's it's not going to be a popular dinner party conversation opener, isn't it? Like how much of an easier time you've had because of all the technology that you've been able to adopt.
I almost feel bad, like I'm about to sound ageist, and I don't mean ageist in years because I got plenty of gray, but ageist in the age of your company. Older companies, and I've worked for plenty of them, it's more difficult when you have some legacy systems, and there's a lot of resistance to ripping out that on premise because, oh my gosh, I want to host. People believe you have to host your own information, and the way the world's evolved the last 10 years, people were quite comfortable having their HCM hosted, but they weren't quite CFOs, frankly, weren't quite that comfortable having their financial information hosted. And honestly, I think there's no better place to have it than is to have someone else hosted for you in the cloud and you not have to worry about that server in the basement and whether it's up or down and whether your guys can get into the building to keep it maintained. And so I think the whole COVID thing has forced people to accept that almost all of your systems will be hosted in the cloud by others and not by you in your basement.
That whole scenario is kind of counterintuitive in some ways, isn't it? You expect the sort of the large, solid, well established, decades old, or even hundreds of years old companies. You would expect them to be both predictable and able to scale, but in many respects, in the technology world that we live in at the moment, that those two things are the opposite. Derek, predictability for you means something different, though, doesn't it?
Well, I echo what John says, and as he was talking, I thought back to my journey of when I joined Computer Aid. I came from PricewaterhouseCoopers, so very much seeing my clients go through these transformations, the SAP and Oracles, and still on-prem. And when I joined Computer Aid, we probably had 18 to 20 different disparate systems that kind of were spaghetti coded together to support us. We consolidated and went to an ERP, and then have since gone to Workday. And the other interesting thing that came to mind was when I think back to here in the Northeast, Hurricane Sandy, and the impact it had to us. And I thought about one of my clients in New York City here. To John's point, they couldn't get in the basement because it was flooded. And you fast forward to today, everything's in the cloud. It's so easy for us to know what Workday is on. If I can get my people home and up and running, I know that they're going to be just fine and we can keep going. So from a finance perspective, I got to make sure bills are going out, cash can be applied, and we can pay our suppliers. And from a predictability perspective, knowing that everything we do is in the cloud is tremendous. So it's okay, I lose half a day to a day, no big deal. Move my workforce home. And I think like John said, it's the unpredictable piece was we were doing well, but COVID, when I look at how our team has done, we're doing even better. And they've embraced working from home, having everything digitized and in a single platform has been tremendous. So you don't have to always say, can you go pull this? It's right there. It's follow the object. You'll be inside the tenant. And as November and December played out back in 2020, we're using this opportunity to redo our office space, and we threw away over 100 filing cabinets that were just littered with paper. And it's amazing to see back from the 90s to today how the world has changed, and we don't need that. And here, everything is at your fingertips.
Did it feel good just throwing them out?
It was interesting, Kate. You start going through the file, and you're cabinet third, and you're like, what am I doing? Why am I'm throwing away 95% of what I'm looking at. But you know what? What's interesting about COVID and just, you think you need something and you store it away and you're like, we've been at home for 9 months. I haven't needed this. I don't believe I'm going to need it. And it really, it just feels really good to be in the world of technology that we are today. And I can't wait to see where it goes at this point. We're talking about RPA and innovations and everything being in the cloud. It'll be really interesting to see what happens from a finance perspective. I think we tend to be the leaders in terms of we have a lot of high volume repetitive tasks where technology benefits us. It feels good to know that we've, as an organization, we've embraced it and we've been successful to follow others to really let technology help us do our jobs better. So that knowing we've accomplished that feels great. And we've also given our team on the delivery side, a playground, if you will, to help learn how to use these technologies as they're coming into the market space. And you need guinea pigs, and we're happy to be our own guinea pig.
Yeah, and of course the flexibility of being able to scale rapidly in both directions, is one of the big benefits and innovations, I guess, that you both are using in many respects. I want to talk a bit about automation as well, because it's not typically, you think automation, you don't typically think your industries, but I know that you're both using automation, within your business models. John, what about you for the optimization of your business processes?
Well, it's a good question, and we have to automate because we use from a labor model we use an onshore or a nearshore model. So all of our European transactions are processed in Europe by bodies that we have in Northern Ireland or in England, and all of our North American transactions are processed somewhere either in Texas or in Arizona. And for us, we don't compete and can't compete and won't compete on labor arbitrage by throwing bodies to some of the cheaper markets in the other hemisphere. So we have to automate. And for us, what we believe it does is it reduces the opportunity for errors by automating everything that we do. And I think I hit on this earlier, we use a lot of RPA. We use a firm called Automation Anywhere that's been really helpful, and it actually works quite well with Workday, frankly, to do a lot of the processes. The interesting thing is, if you stay inside a certain system, if you stay inside Workday, there's not much that you have to automate because it's already been done. The things we're doing is when we happen to hand off between Workday and another system. Well, we don't have a lot of boutique systems out there. We just don't. We buy out basically all the modules that we can that are applicable for my business on Workday. And then to be fair, we also do that with Salesforce. So there aren't a lot of handoffs, and it's right there with the handoffs between systems that you look at automation. But if you stay within the confines of Workday, and it's your HCM and your PSA and your payroll and your financials, you actually don't need to automate that much because a lot of this is done for you. You're not doing a handoff where you're trying to wonder what Johnny or Billy or Joey makes as you're trying to do some modeling inside Excel for your financials, because it's all in one database, and that's just incredibly powerful. And I had never worked with Workday or something like that until I came to OneSource a little over 4 years ago, and I was just amazed by it, how much easier it is and how rarely we have errors because it's all in the same database. There's no handoffs needed when you're all in the same platform and the same system.
And all of this sort of like goes into the big mix of being able to support your customers, through their own crises through this pandemic, but also just a normal operation of daily life, safeguarding jobs and keeping everything sort of like flowing through the business process. We're almost out of time, but I really quickly want to just touch on one question with you both, and that is, change is always hard for leaders, but you clearly are two people who have embraced it, way earlier than anybody else. What do you think what would be your key advice for how you help your business make that cultural shift successfully? Let's start with you first, Derek.
Yeah, we as I look at my team over the years, I've come to really appreciate and embrace the fact that the average tenure of my team members, if you will, I'm north of 15, 20 years. So they've been down this journey with us over the years and seen the evolution. So as I've introduced the idea, like, let's focus on automating various tasks, the first thing you typically have to lead with, I want to be able to deploy you as my team members to more value add tasks. How do I give you new opportunity? And also, where do you spend time where you just feel like you're wasting your time and you're doing swivel chair? So it was really bringing them into it early on to say, help us identify areas that you feel like you're bogged down with. And we got that buy-in. And what's interesting is I look at the list of automations, I think we're just under 40. A lot of that was due to them saying, like my example earlier, yeah, I get these phone calls, I get these emails. Okay, that's simple data we can push out. So it was really bringing them into the mix in the beginning, made it much easier for them to culturally accept how technology is really an asset to us, not necessarily something that's going to make my job go away. That's not the objective. It might be in some cases, but for us we're a growing business. You're a great part of our team. I want to be able to deploy you to other tasks, and that's how we've really delivered the message to the team, to really embrace this change.
John?
I think one way I would answer that from a finance perspective is, and this was a learning for me, and then we've hired, as we hire people onto our accounting or finance team and other, where they're used to some sort of very customized on-premise software. One little speech I've given, and it ultimately seems to work kind of well with them, is, the way we issue an invoice is not what made us a great company. Just because we can customize a field over here and have the cutest little invoice that goes out, or how we reconcile accounts receivable, is not what made us a great company. It's how we service the customers. And in the back end, having a less customized, but frankly less effort system actually in the long run is a lot better. It's not how cute that we made our P&L header and how we customize it. That's not what made us a great company. And it's really the ability to have real-time information and do the back office processes as easily and as quickly and as cheaply as possible, so that the rest of us can focus on servicing the customer. And I think it takes some people that are used to having their own customized system, it takes them a little while to adjust, and then they say, I didn't need all that stuff. I didn't need all these things that had to be maintained and updated every 6 months and all those other things that go with it. And I think people they get used to that. And I've said this a lot, I think Derek and I both have. 2020 forced a lot of us to go there whether we wanted to or not. It took some of us dragging and, kicking and dragging and screaming along the way. And I think people look back and say, that wasn't that hard. That was actually pretty easy.
Yeah. And, I still firmly believe that there will be a big positive out of this whole process, that we will all have pushed forward to the point where we need to be to start really making the most of the benefits of this sort of, predictability, innovation, scalability. These all give us the opportunity to be better businesses and work better together. Thank you, gentlemen, so much for spending the time with us today and sharing your experience and your advice. I hope that people have found it helpful at home. It is sadly all we have time for. So, Derek, John, thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting to you. And also thank you, of course, to our generous hosts, Workday, for making this conversation possible today and bringing it to you. And thanks, of course, to you for spending some time with us watching today. I hope that you found the conversation interesting and inspiring. And I look forward to hearing about your transformation journeys in the future. Whatever you're doing for the rest of the year, then I wish you the very best of merriments. Thank you so much. It's been lovely speaking to you. Goodbye.